Have you ever felt exhausted, overwhelmed, mentally tangled, without really knowing why? The truth is, what's draining you might not even be yours. Most of what stresses you out isn't under your control. It's someone else's opinion, someone else's mistake, something from the past you can't change, or a future that hasn't even happened yet. And here's the unsettling part. The more attention you give to what's outside of you, the more power you surrender over what's inside you, your peace, your presence, your strength. It's a hard truth, but one that frees you. Most of your anxiety isn't yours to carry. It's born from trying to hold things that were never in your hands to begin with. A careless word from someone else. A mistake you didn't make. A regret from the past. Or a storm you keep bracing for that never even arrives. And yet, the longer you dwell on what's beyond your control, the more disconnected you become from the one place that's always been yours, your inner world. In the end, it's not the chaos around you that breaks you. It's the chaos inside you, the one you never learned to quiet. The one that whispers fears you've never questioned. The one that steals your sleep, your clarity, your presence. That's where Stoicism begins. Not at the surface, but at the moment your illusion ends. The illusion that you can control everything. Not the kind of control that moves you forward, but the kind that wears you out as you chase the impossible. Because no one tells you this up front. Peace doesn't come from managing everything. It comes from learning what's truly yours, and letting go of what isn't. It comes from discerning what you can change, and what you must release. That's where real power is built. Not in controlling life, but in meeting it, with clarity, with discipline, with acceptance. Not by being untouchable, but by being unshakably grounded. This episode isn't about escaping chaos. It's about facing it head-on. It's about retraining your mind, not to dominate the world, but to master the only territory you'll ever fully own, yourself. Let's begin. Because your peace, it starts exactly where the illusion of control ends, and that's exactly where we begin, right at the edge of illusion, where peace isn't something you chase, but something you return to. Now let's go deeper. There's something profoundly human, almost childlike, about the urge to control life. It starts when we're young, doesn't it? A toddler cries, believing that if they scream loud enough, the world will bend to their will. As children, we tug on reality, hoping it'll move just because we feel something deeply. We cry to be heard. We stomp to be seen. We beg the world to shape itself around our emotions. And though we grow older, that impulse doesn't really leave us. It just becomes more subtle, more sophisticated. Now we try to control how people perceive us. We obsess over appearances, curate our personalities, filter our emotions, just to make sure we're liked. We try to predict the future, micromanage outcomes, calculate every move, and even attempt to force things like peace, success, and happiness. As if these things were wild animals we could somehow tame with just enough effort. But here's the painful irony. The tighter we grip life, the more it slips right through our fingers. Thousands of years ago, the Stoics understood this exact struggle. Epictetus, a man who had every reason to feel powerless, being born a slave, said something that still shakes the soul today. There is only one way to happiness, and that is to cease worrying about things which are beyond the power of our will. Take a moment. Read that again. This isn't just a poetic line, it's a warning. A quiet but urgent invitation to stop outsourcing your peace to things you were never meant to carry. Because the truth is, the more you chase what's outside your control, approval, outcomes, perfection, the more you forfeit the peace that's already sitting inside you, waiting to be noticed. Peace doesn't show up when life goes your way. It doesn't arrive wrapped in a perfect day, or in the applause of others. It begins when your mind stops demanding that life should bend to your will. Let's paint a picture. You're in traffic, you're late, you have a meeting, and everything's backed up for miles. You can clench your jaw, shout, blame every car in front of you, grip the steering wheel until your hands ache. But here's the question, will any of that move the traffic? No. All it does is multiply your frustration and drain your energy before you even arrive. Now, imagine the same moment, but this time, you pause. You take a deep breath. You exhale the tension and say, this is out of my hands. But my reaction? That's still mine. And in that tiny, quiet shift, you reclaim something most people never even realize they lost. Your inner authority. You didn't move the cars, but you moved yourself. And that is what real power looks like. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's the quiet confidence of someone who knows they can't always control what happens, but they can always control how they respond. The Stoics taught that the real disturbance in life isn't the event itself. It's how we judge it. And that's exactly where we'll go next, coming up, why our interpretation of reality is more powerful than reality itself, and how to train it. And as we shift the way we interpret life's chaos, we begin to see the invisible strings we've been pulling, and realize some of them were never ours to hold in the first place. Imagine this. You send someone a message. No reply. A few hours pass, then a day. And suddenly, without any evidence, your mind whispers, they must be mad at me. Or maybe a plan you were excited about falls through, and almost instantly, the thought creeps in, I'm a failure. But let's ask the question most people forget to ask in that moment. What if neither of those things is true? What if the only thing creating your stress is the story you've told yourself about what's happening? You see, this is where real emotional discipline begins. Letting go, it's not weakness. It's not indifference. It's a deliberate practice. It's the powerful decision to stop handing your inner peace over to things that were never designed to hold it. Because let's face it, the weather changes. People leave. Markets crash. Plans crumble. Life moves in unpredictable, uncontrollable waves. But even in the middle of that uncertainty, there are things that don't move: your breath, your values, your inner stillness. These become your anchors. You don't need to control the storm outside when you've trained your hands to hold the wheel. One of the most painful patterns we fall into is this: believing that if we just try harder, we can make things right. If I just explain better, they'll understand. If I give more, they'll stay. If I worry enough, maybe I can prevent the worst. But friend, let's be honest. Most of that is an illusion. You don't control how others feel. You don't control the future. You don't control how the world responds to your efforts. And here's the most liberating truth of all. You don't need to. Your peace doesn't live in the outcomes. It lives in your ownership of the few things that are actually yours. Your focus. Your attention. Your choices. Your attitude. Your response. That's where all your power lives. And something beautiful happens when you start living from that place. Life stops feeling like a battlefield. You stop swinging at everything. You stop reacting to every shadow. Instead, life becomes more like a dance. Sometimes, the rhythm is yours to lead. Sometimes, you let go, and flow. And in that surrender, that wisdom, that movement, peace finds you. So how do you start training this mindset? Simple. Start with your tension. Every time you feel yourself tighten, your jaw clench, your chest contract, your breath shorten, pause. And ask yourself, what am I trying to control right now? Is it someone's opinion? Is it the outcome of a conversation? Is it a situation from the past that's long gone? If the answer is yes, then it's time to practice what the Stoics knew deeply. Letting go isn't losing control. It's finally putting your hands on the controls that actually matter. Now, let's go even deeper. Because learning to pause is one thing. Take a deep breath. Now, let it go. Not because you're giving up. Not because you don't care. But because it was never yours to carry in the first place. You see, letting go doesn't have to be your last resort. It can be your first act of wisdom. True peace doesn't come from trying to bend the world to fit your expectations. It comes when your will aligns with reality. And when you can do that, not just once, but again and again, moment by moment, even in the heart of chaos, you'll find something rare. Stillness. This is the secret that so many miss. Control isn't about dominating what's around you. It's not about shaping the weather, shifting people, or forcing outcomes. Control, real control, is internal. Yet most of us are trained to believe the opposite. We think control means having power over the external, over people, over timing, over decisions, over life itself. But the more we grasp, the more life pulls back. People change. Plans unravel. Efforts sometimes fall flat, no matter how pure our intentions. And still, in the midst of it all, one form of control remains untouched. Your inner world. That is where Stoicism plants its roots. The Stoic doesn't waste energy chasing what's out of reach. Instead, they sharpen their attention on the only thing they truly can influence: themselves. Not the spinning storm, but their steady center. Not the noise, but the clarity beneath it. Marcus Aurelius captured this truth in one powerful line. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Let that sink in. Because that's the shift we need. Control doesn't mean forcing life to follow your script. It means becoming a master of your response when life throws you something unexpected. But let's be honest. Most of us weren't taught this. We were taught to chase results. To fix everything. To anticipate every outcome and prevent every mistake. That's why we overthink how others see us. That's why we replay conversations on loop, picking apart every word. That's why we lie awake at night, haunted by things we can't undo. Somewhere along the way, we confused external control with internal safety. We started believing that if we could just manage every detail, then, finally, we'd feel safe. But has that ever really worked? What if safety never came from control, but from trust? What if your real power wasn't in bending the world to your will, but in standing steady, no matter how the world bends around you? And yet, despite everything we try, every effort to micromanage life, we end up trapped in the very chaos we were hoping to escape. Funny, isn't it? We chase control, and become prisoners to the things we cannot command. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Real control, the kind that transforms you, is quiet. It's not dramatic. It's not something you can flaunt on social media or collect compliments for. No one will throw you a parade for biting your tongue during an argument. No one will applaud you for walking away from conflict instead of fueling it. No one claps when you let go of what your ego desperately wants to grip. But those silent, inner choices, they're the foundation of unshakable character. They're the quiet victories that build resilience, the kind that doesn't buckle under pressure. The kind that doesn't require the world to behave in order for you to be at peace. Picture this. Someone insults you. The words sting. Your pride rises. Fists clenched. Ready to fire back. But in that split second, something else awakens inside you. A pause. And within that pause lies your power. You don't control their words, their tone, or their intentions. But you do control how you meet them. Do you lash out? Do you internalize the insult and carry it like a burden? Or do you choose silence? Do you let the words fall, harmless, like rain on stone? That moment, small, almost invisible, is where true mastery begins. Because control doesn't always look like power. Sometimes, it looks like restraint. Sometimes, it's knowing you could react, but choosing not to. And it's not just about emotions. It's about where you place your attention, your energy, your mental effort. Because where your mind lives daily, that's who you become. If you scatter it across every petty distraction, every headline you can't change, every drama that was never yours to begin with, you won't just feel overwhelmed. You'll feel powerless. And not because life is too much, but because you're carrying too much that isn't yours. The Stoic doesn't carry every burden. They filter life like a master. Is this mine to act on? Or mine to release? That filter, practiced consistently, creates a kind of inner freedom. It's not loud. It doesn't draw attention. But it changes everything. You no longer need every situation to be perfect. You stop trying to control what was never yours. You let go of the exhausting need to fix everything. And when that happens, you feel lighter, calmer, stronger. You become the kind of person who walks into the storm, and still walks. Because your peace isn't built on the absence of chaos. It's built on your ability to remain centered in the middle of it. Let's explore that deeper in the next section. What does it really mean to remain grounded when everything around you feels like it's falling apart? So how do you stay grounded? How do you walk through the storm and still walk straight? It doesn't happen overnight. It takes practice. It takes awareness. It takes slowing down when everything in you wants to react. It takes asking yourself, sometimes 10 times a day, Am I trying to control the uncontrollable? Or am I leading myself with calm intention? You see, you can't stop the tide. You can't pause the winds or order the ocean to be still. But you can learn to swim. You can learn to breathe, float, and move with grace through the waves. Not by controlling the sea, but by mastering yourself. The more you train your attention to turn inward, to anchor to what's yours, the less shaken you will be by the world outside. That's the real test of strength. Not how much you command, but how little you're disturbed. So here's your challenge. Just for the next 7 days. Each time something frustrates you, each time you feel the spike of tension in your body, pause. Don't rush to fix it. Don't spiral into blame or worry. Ask yourself instead, is this inside my control? Or is this outside of it? If it's inside, take action. If it's outside, release it. Not because you don't care, but because your care is too valuable to waste on the wind. Real control doesn't raise its voice. It doesn't seek applause. It doesn't need to be seen. It moves inward, silently. It quietly reshapes how you move through the world. Not by bending reality to your will, but by mastering the only place where you were always meant to hold power. Yourself. And that power, it leaks far more often than we realize. Every day, we leak energy, not through doing too much, but by thinking too much. We drain ourselves with mental noise. We give our energy away to arguments that ended hours ago, to imaginary scenarios that haven't happened, and may never happen, to people who no longer hold a place in our present, to outcomes we fear, but simply cannot influence. And then, at the end of the day, we ask ourselves, why am I so tired? When we barely moved an inch. The truth? Exhaustion isn't always about what you did. It's about what you carried. The Stoics understood this well. They saw energy not as some mystical force, but as a practical, precious resource. Your energy is finite. It's sacred. Where you send it, what you give it to, that shapes your peace, your productivity, your presence. And most of all, it shapes who you become. So now the real question becomes, how much of your precious energy are you wasting on things that were never yours to carry? Most of us don't even notice it. We walk around deeply entangled with the uncontrollable, tied up in invisible knots. We feel responsible for how others feel, for how they perceive our words, for how life plays out for them. We call it empathy, or being loyal, or caring. But often, it's not. When you're constantly pouring your energy into fixing what was never yours to begin with, you don't just lose time. You lose your equilibrium. You lose your center. And what's worse, that scattered, reactive, anxious energy, it becomes your new normal. You live in a loop, constantly reacting, constantly tired, constantly overwhelmed. But here's the truth. Reclaiming your energy is not selfish. It's responsible. Because when you bring your attention back to what's actually yours, your breath, your discipline, your choices, your emotional responses, your values, You don't become distant or cold. You become centered. You become rooted. You become someone whose peace is earned, not borrowed from circumstance. You start to see clearly what's worth your time, and what isn't. Let's make it simple. Someone disrespects you. You could replay the moment in your head 100 times. You could dissect every word, every tone. You could tell 10 people the story, relive the pain, stir the anger. Or you could acknowledge what happened, set a boundary if it's needed, and move forward. One of those choices drains you. The other restores you. This isn't about pretending things don't affect you. It's about choosing not to let them consume you. And then there's the trap we all fall into. Worrying about the future. What if it doesn't work out? What if they never reply? What if I fail? We convince ourselves that worry is some form of preparation. But it's not. Worry is a mental rehearsal of pain. It strips the present moment of its clarity and replaces it with fear. And here's where the Stoics offered a better path. They didn't tell you to live blindly or naively. They said, prepare with reason. Do what you can. Plan with wisdom. Then let it go. Because no matter how hard you try, you can't outthink uncertainty. But you can train your mind to respond with calm when uncertainty arrives. That's where your power lies. So, how do you keep your peace when the world won't stop spinning? You choose not to be consumed by it. And this principle doesn't only apply to your personal life. It stretches outward, to how you engage with the world. Think about it. The 24/7 news cycle. The scrolling on social media. The constant flood of opinions, disasters, debates, outrage. If you let them, these external voices will hijack your emotional state. They'll shape your worldview. They'll fill your mind with noise so loud that your own thoughts get drowned. But you're not helpless in that storm. You have something more powerful than control. You have choice. You can unplug. You can choose how often you check your feed. You can say, this is enough for today. You can filter your inputs, not to ignore the world, but to protect your mind from drowning in it. That's what reclaiming your energy looks like in the real world. It's not about escaping life. It's about unsubscribing from emotional chaos that isn't yours. It's about choosing your responses with care. And defending your inner space like you would guard your own home. Let me ask you this. Would you leave your front door wide open for every stranger to wander in? Of course not. So why open your mind to every worry, every drama, every headline that screams for your attention but offers no solution? This takes practice. It takes honesty. It takes noticing your patterns and calling them out. It means saying, no, I won't overthink that again. No, I won't spend the day spiraling over something I cannot change. No, I won't keep wasting my emotional energy on someone who doesn't value it. This is not harsh. This is not cold. This is clarity. And clarity is strength. Because when you stop giving your energy to what you cannot command, you'll be amazed by how much lighter your spirit becomes. And how much more you can accomplish with the energy that actually belongs to you. And here's another major shift. Let go of the illusion that you can control others. One of the most deeply exhausting patterns we carry is this belief. If I just say it better, If I act the right way, if I give enough, stay calm enough, love hard enough, they'll change. We often tell ourselves that if we just hold on long enough, try hard enough, love deeply enough, they'll finally treat us better. That they'll start to respect us more. That they'll love us with the same depth and consistency we give them. That they'll see us, hear us, understand us, and maybe, just maybe, they'll offer the closure we ache for. But here's the truth that stings before it frees. That's the trap. It's the false hope that your inner peace depends on someone else's transformation. But it doesn't. It never has. Because no matter how compassionate, patient, forgiving, or generous you are, you cannot control another person's mind, heart, or actions. Trying to steer their behavior, even when it's coming from a place of love, isn't connection. It's control in disguise. The Stoics saw through this illusion thousands of years ago. They taught that to live in harmony with nature means to accept people as they are. Not as we wish they would be. But don't misunderstand this. It's not about tolerating mistreatment. It's not about lowering your standards or settling for less than your worth. It's about this. You stop trying to force people to become who they're not ready or willing to be. You draw boundaries, firm, clear ones, not as ultimatums, but as protection for your soul. You walk away, not to hurt or punish, but to reclaim your peace. Because trying to change someone who refuses to grow is like trying to hold the wind in your hands. You'll end up empty, frustrated, and tired from the chase. Now pause and think. How much emotional weight are you carrying from relationships where your inner voice whispers, "If I just love more, they'll see me. If I just explain it right, they'll finally understand. If I just hold on a little longer, they'll change." That cycle? It becomes a quiet form of emotional servitude, where you slowly, silently abandon your own values, your needs, your truths, just to keep the connection alive. And in doing so, you don't just lose energy. You begin to lose yourself. But there's a turning point. And it begins here. True freedom begins the moment you accept this reality. People are who they choose to be, not who you hope they'll become. Your responsibility ends at your side of the equation. You can offer love, but you cannot demand it in return. You can model respect, but you cannot control whether they mirror it back. And that realization? It's not defeat, it's release. A moment where you stop chasing, and start reclaiming. Because what comes next is the rediscovery of your own center, where your peace no longer depends on anyone's approval, closure, or change. You can speak your truth with honesty, with love, with the best of intentions. But you can't force someone to hear it. And the sooner you release that illusion, the sooner you'll reclaim the energy you've been quietly, endlessly pouring into the impossible. Letting go doesn't mean closing your heart. It means opening your eyes. It means beginning to see clearly, finally, that influence is not power. You may inspire someone. You might be a catalyst for their growth. But the moment you try to bend their will just to meet your needs, you're no longer in love. You're in fear. And that fear? It's subtle, but deep. It's the fear of being misunderstood, of being unloved, of being forgotten or left behind. It's that quiet belief whispering in your chest. If I can just hold it together a little longer, they'll understand. If I say it perfectly, maybe they won't leave. But that fear is deceptive. We think that control will protect us from pain. But instead, it multiplies it. It creates tension. It builds resistance. It turns love into emotional warfare. You find yourself trapped in loops, endless conversations that never resolve. Trying to explain yourself to someone who doesn't want to understand. Giving more and more. Trying to please someone who constantly moves the goalposts. And all the while, buried beneath the exhaustion, there's a simple truth quietly waiting to be seen. It's not your job to change them. It's your job to choose how you respond to them. So what does that actually look like? It looks like finally stepping off the hamster wheel. It looks like no longer chasing apologies that may never come. No longer crafting messages you'll never send. No longer shrinking yourself into a version that fits someone else's mold. It looks like breathing again. It looks like releasing the grip you didn't even realize was clenching around your heart. Letting yourself rest from the emotional tightrope walk. It's about stepping back, not out of spite, but out of self-respect. Because you realize, you can't force someone to value what they're not ready to see. But you can value yourself enough to stop waiting for them to. And from that place, you begin to rewrite your story. Not a story of trying to be enough for someone else, but one of remembering you already are. Sometimes, healing begins with walking away from the people who benefit from your silence. From the spaces where your voice had to shrink just to maintain a fragile peace. But let's be clear. Peace doesn't come from making yourself small. It doesn't come from biting your tongue until it bleeds. Or from twisting yourself into shapes that no longer resemble who you are. Real peace isn't found in controlling others. It's found in setting yourself free. From the need to please. From the craving to be understood by those unwilling to listen. From the weight of carrying someone else's emotional burden just to feel safe. The Stoic doesn't beg to be understood. He lives with integrity, with alignment between his values and his actions. And then, he lets the world respond however it wants to. That path isn't easy. Because it asks you to surrender the image. The version of you that's always agreeable, always likable, always enough. But here's what no one tells you. When you surrender that illusion, you gain something stronger than approval. You gain self-respect. And self-respect. It's quieter than validation. But infinitely more grounding. So pause and ask yourself, who are you still trying to fix? Whose behavior are you anxiously monitoring? Who are you shrinking for, still hoping that maybe, if you're kind enough, quiet enough, giving enough, they'll finally understand? And then ask, what would happen if you just let go? Not out of bitterness. Not to prove a point. But because your energy is sacred. Because your peace is more valuable than someone else's misunderstanding. Because the only thing more draining than trying to change people is realizing you never had to in the first place. This is where Stoicism cuts steep. It reminds us that acceptance isn't weakness. It's not resignation. It's not apathy. It's clarity. Because most suffering doesn't begin with what is. It begins with what we refuse to accept. It's not the heartbreak itself that breaks you. It's the belief that it shouldn't have happened. It's not the setback that ruins your peace. It's the narrative that you deserved better. It's not the ending that wounds you most. It's the story you told yourself about how it was supposed to go. That resistance is an invisible cage. It traps you in a war with reality. A war you will never win. So what now? It begins with a whisper of courage. It begins by looking life square in the eyes and saying, "This is what it is. And now I choose how to meet it." And that's not weakness. That's mastery. Because once you stop wishing the rain away, you finally have the power to choose what you'll do in the storm. But let's not pretend this is easy. Acceptance sounds simple. Until it asks you to stare something in the face you wish wasn't real. It feels uncomfortable. It feels unnatural. It feels like giving up. If I accept that I failed, does that mean I've stopped trying? If I accept they're really gone, does that mean it didn't matter? If I accept this pain, does that mean I'm okay with it? The answer? No. Acceptance isn't resignation. It's not approval. It's not apathy. It's recognition. It's the decision to look life straight in the eyes and say, "This is what it is. Now what?" Because you can't change what you refuse to face. You can't grow past a truth you keep pretending doesn't exist. And you certainly can't improve reality you spend your energy denying. Epictetus once said, "Make the best use of what is in your power. And take the rest as it happens." That line? That's Stoicism in its purest form. Not blind optimism. Not passive suffering. But practical wisdom. If something is broken, fix it. If something can't be fixed, fix your relationship to it. Either way, start with what's real. Not what you wish were true. Not what you hoped would happen. What is, right now, in front of you. Think about how much time we spend in resistance. Hoping someone would finally be different. Wishing our childhood had been something else. Clinging to the belief that a diagnosis must be wrong. Telling ourselves a job, a partner, a situation isn't really that bad. And while we fight reality with all our might, it just sits there. Patient, unmoving, waiting. Waiting for us to stop struggling long enough to actually see it. Acceptance isn't giving in. It's getting honest. It's removing the fog from your windshield so you can finally drive forward. Because how can you navigate life if the map you're holding was drawn by denial? The Stoic begins, always, with what is. No matter how raw. No matter how uncomfortable. No matter how painful. Because once you're standing in truth, action becomes clear. Picture this. You lose something important. A job, a friend, a dream you poured yourself into. Now you have two paths. You can resist. This shouldn't have happened. You can replay every scene in your mind. Trying to rewrite it, rewind it, undo it. Or you can take a breath. Face what is. And ask, now that this is true, what do I want to do next? And that, right there, is where the journey to freedom begins. Every moment. Every detail. Your mind replays it again and again. searching for a different ending that never comes. But at some point, you have to stop asking why did this happen? And start asking what now? Because when you say, this happened, I didn't want it, I didn't choose it, but here it is. That shift changes everything. Suddenly, you're no longer stuck in the loop. Your energy, once drained by resistance, becomes fuel. Your direction becomes clear. Your next step appears. And this doesn't just apply to life's biggest heartbreaks. It's there in the everyday moments too. You miss your train. Someone makes a rude comment. Plans fall apart. You hit a wall of unexpected delays. In those moments, however small, you're given a choice. Resist or accept. React or respond. Panic or pause. And the more often you choose acceptance, the more resilient you become. Not because life gets easier. It won't. But because you've stopped wasting strength on trying to undo what has already happened. You grow, not by fighting reality, but by flowing through it with awareness. And perhaps the most powerful form of acceptance isn't about events at all. It's about yourself. Because sometimes, the hardest truth to face is the one looking back at you in the mirror. We avoid it. We distract ourselves from it. We punish ourselves for it. But the Stoic, he doesn't look away. He meets his reflection with clarity. Not judgment. Not shame. He says, this is who I am today. I take full responsibility. And that's where true growth begins. Not in self-hatred. Not in pretending. But in truth. Because you can't change what you won't accept. You can't heal what you won't touch. So if there's something you've been resisting, a conversation you keep postponing, a truth you've been too afraid to name, a shift you know is overdue, let this be your sign. Not to give up, but to wake up. Step out of the illusion, into the light of awareness. Because once you stop fighting what is, you're finally free to begin building what could be. And that's not giving in. That's taking your power back. It all starts with mastering one thing. Not the world, not the outcome, but your thoughts and actions. And in a world that's moving faster than ever, where everything feels urgent, where opinions fly louder than truth, in this chaotic hour, this loud, fast world that constantly tells you what to think, how to feel, who to be, it's easy to forget one simple, powerful truth. The only things you truly control are your thoughts and your actions. Nothing more. Nothing less. And that's not a weakness. That's freedom. This is the heart of Stoic teaching. And yet, it's also its greatest challenge. Because the human mind, it's not naturally still. It grasps, it judges, it predicts, it clings. We think that if we worry enough, we'll be safe. If we plan enough, we'll stay ahead. If we think about someone long enough, maybe they'll change. But all of that is just noise. Mental motion doesn't equal mastery. Overthinking doesn't create control. It just creates anxiety, disguised as strategy. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He didn't say, "You have power over outcomes." Not power over other people. Not power over the past. Just your mind. And what you choose to do with it. Let that sink in. Because while it sounds simple, living it is anything but easy. Controlling your thoughts doesn't mean forcing them to go away. It means guiding them. It means training them, like a muscle. When doubt whispers, you don't argue with it, you observe it. When jealousy creeps in, you don't feed it, you reframe it. When anger rises, you don't explode, you investigate it. You stop being a passenger in your own mind and start becoming the driver. And when it comes to your actions, the same truth applies. You don't control how others receive you, but you control the intention behind your words. You don't control what the world offers, but you control how you show up in it. With your values, with your discipline, with your integrity. That's your domain, your sacred ground. And when you stay rooted in it, you become unshakable. This isn't just philosophical theory. This is the foundation of emotional maturity. Because the immature mind tries to change the world without ever confronting itself. But the Stoic, he knows better. He knows freedom begins the moment you stop rewriting the external and start mastering the internal. Imagine it. A single day where every time something triggered you, when someone ignored your message, when plans fell apart, when a stranger was unkind, instead of spiraling, you stopped and asked, what part of this is mine to control? And then, you didn't react. You responded. You didn't spiral. You refocused. You didn't crumble. You rose. That kind of mental training, it changes everything. You recalibrated your actions. You stepped back, looked within, and chose clarity over chaos. That's not weakness. That's not avoidance. That's command. And that is what it means to live with intention, not reaction. It means no longer letting life yank your strings. It means you choose your words. You choose your tone. You choose how you move forward, even when the world tries to pull you back. But intention doesn't just stop at action. It also demands something harder. Letting go of blame. If your thoughts and actions are truly yours to control, then so is your responsibility. You're not just a product of your environment. You're not a puppet of your emotions. You're not a victim of your past. You are the author of your responses, the architect of your behavior. And when you slip up, because you will, when you act from anger, speak from insecurity, or spiral into negativity, you don't drown in shame. You realign. You ask, what belief led me here? What action can I take now that aligns with who I want to be? That's how a Stoic moves. Not with guilt. Not with ego. But with awareness. And that level of self-mastery? It doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. It takes honesty. It takes the discipline of daily reflection. It won't make you immune to pain, to failure, to heartbreak. But it will give you clarity through it. The world might still tremble beneath your feet. But you won't crumble. Not because you control the storm, but because you've learned how to steady your mind within it. So if you're overwhelmed right now, if your thoughts feel scattered, your reactions feel automatic, your emotions feel like they're running the show, come back to the only question that truly matters. What do I control right now? If it's not your thought, let it pass. If it's not your action, let it go. Because the more you anchor yourself in what is truly yours, the more power you reclaim from what isn't. And here's the shift. When you consistently live from that place, moment by moment, thought by thought, choice by choice, you'll realize something liberating. You don't need to control everything to find peace in anything. Because the Stoic mind, it doesn't fight the chaos. It filters it, through clarity. Most people go through life like a sponge. They soak up everything. Every insult, every opinion, every fear, every failure. They absorb the world's chaos and carry it like it's their own. But the Stoic, he is not a sponge. He is a filter. He lets the noise pass through, and only holds on to what matters. What gives someone that kind of ability? It's not cold detachment. It's not pretending not to feel. It's not apathy or repression. It's clarity. And clarity begins with self-awareness. The Stoic mind doesn't run from chaos. It watches it. It listens. It waits. It asks the question most people forget to ask. Is this event truly as terrible as it feels? Or is it my interpretation that's fueling the fire? That one small pause. That space between reaction and reflection is where wisdom grows. Because we live in a world that glorifies speed. Instant replies, snap judgments, hot takes without cool thought. But the Stoic, he resists that impulse. He slows down. He breathes. He creates space. And in that space, between stimulus and response, something rare and powerful begins to happen. Choice. You stop being a puppet pulled by emotion. You become a person moved by principle. You stop jumping into every storm. Not because you're numb, but because you value your peace enough to protect it. You no longer offer your energy to every provocation. You no longer fight battles that aren't truly yours. You no longer explain yourself where no explanation is needed. Not every situation needs your reaction. Not every moment deserves your words. Take a simple example. Someone speaks to you with disrespect. The first spark inside you might be heat, anger, hurt, pride flaring up. But the Stoic mind doesn't act on heat. It studies it. It asks, is this really about me? Or is it about their pain, their insecurity, their struggle? And when you dig a little deeper, you often find this truth. People's behavior, most of the time, says far more about them than about you. That's the power of clarity. It's the strength to stay grounded when everything around you is pulling you into the fire. And in the next part, perspective. It's not just a lens, it's a shield. It helps you choose grace over ego, silence over drama, peace over pride. But let's make something clear. Clarity is not passive. It's not standing on the sidelines while life storms past. It's not shrinking. It's not silence at all costs. Clarity means you choose your stance intentionally. Sometimes, that clarity tells you to walk away. Not out of weakness, but out of wisdom. Other times, it tells you to speak up, to assert a boundary, to express truth, to stand your ground. And sometimes, clarity asks you to sit with discomfort, to stay present with pain, to feel what you're feeling instead of running into distraction or denial. But no matter what it asks of you, clarity always comes from a place of reason, not reactivity. This filter, this inner compass, it doesn't show up overnight. It's not a personality trait you're born with. It's a discipline, a practice, a daily choice. It starts with questioning your assumptions. It deepens when you detach from the story you keep telling yourself. It matures when you realize your thoughts are not always facts. And above all, it takes reminding yourself, again and again, what I feel is real, but that doesn't mean it's true. The Stoic mind uses clarity as a compass, not to escape the world, but to engage with it more skillfully. It knows that peace isn't the absence of problems. It's the presence of perspective. So when you learn to slow down your thinking, to ask better questions, to filter what truly deserves your emotional energy, then even in the middle of a storm, you move not with panic, but with precision. So here's your reflection. How often are you reacting from raw emotion, instead of responding from clear intention? How much chaos in your life is not caused by what happened, but by how you interpreted what happened? And what would your life look like if you filtered your world through wisdom instead of noise? Train your mind to see clearly, and chaos will lose its grip on you. Because real strength, as you're about to discover, isn't always in action. Sometimes, it's in surrender. We often think of strength as resistance, as pushing through, standing tall, never backing down, never yielding. But here's a deeper truth. Some of the most powerful moments in life don't come from pushing harder. They come when you finally stop pushing at all. Not because you're weak. Not because you've given up. But because you've finally recognized that resisting reality doesn't change it. It just wears you down. Surrender, in the Stoic sense, is not defeat. It's not laziness. It's not waving a white flag. It is the disciplined, courageous act of facing reality as it is, and choosing to align with it. It means standing in the middle of the storm and saying, "This is the truth right now. I don't have to love it. But I will no longer waste my strength pretending it isn't real." That's not weakness. That's clarity under pressure. And in that clarity, you respond with wisdom, not reactivity, not panic, not ego. Think about it. When you're caught in a strong current while swimming, your instinct may be to fight it, to thrash, to resist. But doing so only drains you faster. You sink. But when you surrender, not with panic, but with presence, you conserve energy, You float. You breathe. And from that calm state, you find your rhythm again. You steer. You swim with purpose. You reach the shore. Life works the same way. You can resist every unexpected change. Every loss, every heartbreak, every twist in the plan. Or you can surrender to what is. And from that surrender, reclaim your power to respond well. The Stoics understood this deeply. They knew that most of our suffering doesn't come from what happens. It comes from our refusal to accept what happens. We replay it. We rewrite it. We wish it were different. We cling to the illusion of how it should have been. As if holding that thought tight enough will make it real. But instead, it just drags us deeper into frustration and helplessness. Seneca said it best. Fate leads the willing and drags the unwilling. When you surrender to what is, you move with life. When you resist it, you get dragged. And let's be clear. Surrender isn't reserved for life's big tragedies. Not just death or failure or heartbreak. It lives in the small daily moments too. The missed train. The delayed response. The coffee spilled on your shirt before a meeting. And as we're about to see, how you meet those small moments matters more than you think. The missed opportunities. The delayed plans. The detours that take you miles off course. Most people see these as failures. As problems to fix. As signs that something's gone terribly wrong. But the Stoic sees something different. Not punishment, but invitation. An invitation to pause. To breathe. To ask, what if this moment isn't here to ruin me, but to teach me how to release the illusion of control? That's the quiet discipline of surrender. It's not loud. It doesn't look like victory in the traditional sense. But make no mistake. It is one of the most courageous things you will ever do. Because surrender demands trust. Not naive hope. Not toxic positivity. But a grounded, rational trust. Trust in your ability to adapt. Trust in the current of life. Trust in the truth that resisting what is inevitable only makes it heavier. And when you begin to live from that place of trust, something powerful happens. You can serve your most sacred resource. Your strength. Because strength isn't proven by how much you can hold, how long you can grind, or how tightly you can cling. Real strength is found in your ability to let go without falling apart. It's found in that still, steady voice that says, "This happened. I feel it. I grieve it. But it does not end me. I move forward." That is not weakness. That is emotional maturity. So if there's something in your life right now that you are resisting, a truth you won't name, a change you're avoiding, a reality you're quietly trying to twist into something else, ask yourself honestly, what would happen if I stopped resisting? Not because I agree with what's happening. Not because I want it. But because I no longer want to waste my energy wrestling shadows. Surrender doesn't mean apathy. It doesn't mean silence. It doesn't mean giving up. It means your actions are no longer driven by illusion, but guided by acceptance. And that changes everything. You move from force to flow, from tension to clarity, from trying to manipulate life to learning how to move with it. In a world that idolizes control, the one who surrenders with wisdom doesn't fade into the background. They stand out, not as weak, but as centered, calm, clear, whole. So when the next difficult moment comes, and it will, remember that every moment offers you a choice. A fork in the road. On one path, reaction. On the other, something deeper. Reaction is fast, automatic, often emotional. Response is slow, measured, intentional. At first glance, they may seem like small variations. A second here, a breath there. But over time, this difference becomes monumental. Reaction feels powerful in the moment. It shouts, slams doors, fires off that text, burns bridges before the smoke even clears. But more often than not, it leads to regret. Response feels quieter, less satisfying at first. But it builds something stronger. Character, clarity, and control. The real difference between reaction and response isn't just timing. It's consciousness. Reaction is when your emotions grab the steering wheel. Response is when you feel the emotion, but you keep your hands on the wheel anyway. That space between stimulus and action. The Stoics called it sacred. It's where your freedom lives. You can't always choose what happens to you, but you can always choose what happens through you. It's in that breath, that heartbeat, that tiny pause, where transformation begins. Let's take a simple example. Someone cuts you off in traffic. Instantly, your blood rises. Your hand hovers over the horn. A curse forms in your throat. That's reaction. But now imagine you pause. You take a breath. And you ask, is this worth my peace? Will this matter tomorrow? Is this about the situation? Or is this about my ego craving justice? That moment of questioning, that flicker of awareness, interrupts the cycle. And that's everything. Because most of our reactions aren't truly ours. They're inherited, conditioned, passed down like old furniture. We pick them up from childhood, from trauma, from chaos we never asked for. But here's the beautiful truth. You don't have to carry them anymore. Response is a choice. A conscious declaration. I will not repeat the pattern. I will not let this moment define me. I will rise above it. And this isn't just about traffic. It isn't just about spilled coffee, missed meetings, or rude strangers. This practice, the sacred pause, applies to the deepest wounds in your life. Criticism, disappointment, betrayal, even success. How do you respond when someone questions your worth? Do you react with anger, or respond with grounded truth? How do you respond when a plan fails? Do you spiral into shame, or reflect and adjust? How do you respond when you're praised? Do you let your ego swell, or remain steady in humility? Every moment, every emotion, offers a fork in the road. And the more you choose conscious response over blind reaction, the more powerful, peaceful, and resilient you become. When someone misunderstands you, do you defend yourself on impulse? Do the words rush out, sharp and raw? Or do you pause, breathe, and clarify with purpose? When you're hurt, do you lash out? Do you let the pain turn into fire, aimed at the nearest target? Or do you take space, reflect, then return with maturity and intention? These aren't just emotional habits. They're not just soft skills or moral suggestions. They are the bricks of your character. They build the structure that holds you upright when the storms come. Choosing to respond instead of react means recognizing that real power doesn't come from domination. It comes from composure. Anyone can explode. Anyone can panic. Anyone can lash out. That takes no strength, only momentum. But to stay steady, to breathe through the discomfort, to answer with clarity, that's inner strength. And the world can feel it, even in your silence. Marcus Aurelius practiced this endlessly. As Emperor of Rome, he held the power of life and death in his words. He could have punished with a glance, rewarded with a nod. But he chose restraint. In his private writings, he reminded himself again and again, don't be carried away by emotion. Let reason guide you. Be firm, but fair. He knew that leadership and life aren't about reacting to every flicker of ego. They're about mastering yourself, especially when no one else can see it. So how do you develop this muscle of response? How do you move from impulsive to intentional? You begin simply by noticing. Each time something stirs you, a sharp word, a delay, a disappointment, pause. Ask yourself, is this a reaction, or a response? Am I obeying my feelings, or observing them? You start creating space, even a breath, between trigger and action. And in that space, you train your nervous system not to associate discomfort with chaos, but with curiosity. You become less interested in being right, and more committed to being wise. You don't need to win the argument. You aim to understand. You aim to elevate. Yes, you'll still feel the emotions. Of course you will. You're human. But the Stoic doesn't fear emotion. He doesn't silence it. He listens. He learns. But he chooses not to be ruled by it. Emotions become messengers, not masters. And something powerful happens when you live this way long enough. You start to notice you're less reactive, less strained, more calm, more deliberate. People feel it in your presence. There's a steadiness, a weight, a quiet strength. And more importantly, you feel it in yourself. You stop being a slave to emotional spikes. You stop letting the world dictate your mood. You start living from your center. And that changes everything. The world will press your buttons. It will test your patience. It will try to drag you into its noise. But in those moments, you have a choice. Will you react with chaos? Or will you respond with clarity? That single breath, that pause, is not weakness. It's power. It's the line between who you were and who you're becoming. Between impulse and intention. Between noise and depth. Because every time you pause, every time you choose intentional response over automatic reaction, you step more fully into the person you were meant to be. This is the heart of real growth. It's not loud. It doesn't seek applause. But it transforms everything. True control, despite what the world says, is self-control. When people talk about power today, they usually point outward. Influence, wealth, status, dominance. The ability to control others. To shape outcomes. To bend circumstances. But the Stoics taught something radically different. To them, the highest form of control was not about what you could command outside. It was about what you could master inside. And nothing captures that more clearly than self-control. Self-control is invisible strength. It doesn't shout. It doesn't boast. But it governs every choice. When no one else is watching. It's the discipline to hold your tongue. When anger flares. The courage to walk away instead of retaliate. The patience to let the storm pass without letting it shake your soul. It's the quiet integrity of doing the right thing, even when it costs you, even when no one sees it, even when the reward is only found within. Self-control is not about becoming cold, detached, or robotic. It's not about silencing your humanity. It's about alignment. It's about knowing what you stand for. And refusing to let momentary emotions rewrite your principles. It's about honoring the long game. Not being ruled by short-term cravings. Epictetus said it simply but profoundly. No man is free who is not master of himself. Let that settle in. Because in a world that tempts you to indulge every feeling, to express every thought without filter, to chase every impulse as if it were urgent truth, the one who has trained their mind, who has learned to wait, to reflect, to respond with principle, that person is rare and powerful. Because they don't need to control the world. They know how to control themselves. And from that foundation, real influence begins. Not the kind that dominates others, but the kind that elevates everyone around them. Next, let's explore how self-control doesn't just protect your peace. It builds the framework for freedom. No man is free who is not master of himself. That ancient truth from Epictetus cuts deeper than any modern quote on discipline. Because real mastery, the kind that sets you free, doesn't come from force. It doesn't come from yelling at yourself to be better. It comes from awareness. From a slow, patient process of falling, correcting, rising again. From quiet repetition when no one is watching. You don't wake up one morning and suddenly have self-control. You build it. Like a muscle. And like any muscle, it grows every time you lift the weight of a hard choice. Every time you say no to something that weakens your mind or spirit. Every time you say yes to what stretches you, grounds you, or makes you better, you become freer. Not freer from responsibilities. Not freer from struggle. But freer from inner chaos. Freer from the need to blame, to react, to spiral. Because here's the truth. Most of us don't live in chains. We live in storms. Emotional storms. Mental whirlpools. And we convince ourselves, they made me angry. They broke me. The world is unfair. But that's the voice of someone who has outsourced their power. The Stoic refuses to live like that. He doesn't pretend feelings don't exist. He doesn't suppress pain, or shame, or anger. But he refuses to let them govern his response. Because self-control is not about denial. It's about direction. It gives you space. Space between thought and action. Space between desire and decision. Space between impulse and intention. And in that space, you don't just survive. You begin to rise. You become someone others trust. More importantly, you become someone you trust. Because you know, I won't betray myself in a moment of weakness. I won't abandon my values just to escape discomfort. But here's the thing. Self-control isn't just about saying no to temptation, to anger, to noise. It's about saying a powerful yes to what actually matters. It's about choosing purpose over pleasure, progress over comfort, discipline over distraction. And this is what separates the Stoic from the average mind. He doesn't spend his life trying to control the world. He focuses instead on the only thing that defines every moment of his life: himself. This kind of control doesn't show up in grand gestures. It reveals itself in the small, hidden choices. Waking up when you said you would. Finishing the task your excuses tried to kill. Holding your tongue in a pointless argument. Choosing silence instead of drama. Letting go instead of proving a point. It's in these micro-decisions that your character is formed. Not in the spotlight, but in the shadows. Because the world might never see it. But you will. And that quiet knowing? That's what freedom feels like. And in the next breath, we ask, what happens when you begin stacking these small victories? Let's explore how these tiny moments of self-control lead to a life of unshakable power. Rest over burnout. Stillness over frenzy. Deliberate presence over endless productivity. None of these choices are flashy. They don't get celebrated in highlight reels. They don't make headlines or go viral. But when practiced daily, they form a kind of inner armor. One that protects not just your focus, but your peace, your values, your soul. Because strength isn't found in noise. It's revealed in quiet consistency. In doing what matters, when no one is watching. In staying true to your direction, even when the world spins around you in chaos. You don't need to control the noise. When you've found the volume knob inside yourself. That's what the Stoic learns. Not to silence the world, but to turn inward and master the response. So if you're searching for control, stop scanning the horizon. Don't look to control others. Don't try to fix the uncontrollable. Start here. Your thoughts, your words, your actions. This is your battleground. This is your revolution. Because the truth is, you don't need the world to get easier. You just need to get stronger, more grounded, more deliberate, more yourself. And that's the lesson at the heart of Stoicism. Your greatest power isn't how much you control. It's who you become. When you realize what was never yours to control, the world will never stop being unpredictable. People will always let you down. Plans will fall apart. Timing won't always make sense. Life will test your patience, your strength, your resolve. But through every storm, there is one anchor that never moves. You. Not who you pretend to be. Not who others need you to be. But who you are. When you're fully aligned with wisdom, you can't control the weather. You can't control time. You can't control how they feel, what they say, or whether they stay. But you can control this moment. Your breath. Your reaction. Your intention. And when you do, you take your power back. Peace isn't found in the outside world aligning with your plans. Peace is found when you align with what truly matters. Your values. Your actions. Your focus. So let go. Let go of the noise, the need to control, the weight that's not yours. And hold on to the one thing that always is. Yourself. That's where your strength lies. That's the Stoic way. Still, steady, unshaken,